Are we ready? Okay. Stand a little bit more
closer.
together. So, well, stand together so we don't look like we're. Okay. All right, we ready? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to an incredibly humid day in Washington, D.C. I'm Congresswoman Kathy Manning. I am so proud to represent North Carolina's 6th Congressional District. And I want to thank Whip Clark and all my wonderful colleagues for being here today on World Contraception Day as we speak about the alarming threat to contraception access. 2 years ago, Donald Trump's hand-picked MAGA Supreme Court justices upended 50 years of judicial precedent to overturn Roe versus Wade. This horrendous decision stripped millions of women of the right to obtain an abortion and unleashed a new wave of right-wing attacks on the full range of women's reproductive health care, including birth control. In fact, in Justice Thomas's concurring opinion in Dobbs, he explicitly called for the reconsideration of Griswold versus Connecticut, the 1965 Supreme Court case that established the right to use contraception. And this has served as a rallying cry for extremist Republicans to target contraception. And that's exactly what's been happening. As Donald Trump said, he's looking at restrictions on contraception access, and his Extreme Project 2025 makes it clear that they are going to go after birth control by redefining common forms of contraceptives like Plan B and IUD, claiming that those methods of birth control actually cause abortions. That is ridiculous, and it flies in the face of medical science. We're also seeing right-wing lawmakers in states across the country ramp up attacks on contraception. In Oklahoma, extremist Republican lawmakers are pushing radical legislation to outlaw widely used forms of contraceptions like IUDs and the morning after pill. In states from Virginia to Arizona to Louisiana, extremist Republicans have blocked efforts to protect the right to contraception. Make no mistake, Donald Trump and his MAGA allies' attacks on women's reproductive freedoms will not end with overturning Roe. Instead, they're doubling down on a radical agenda to roll back even the most basic forms of women's reproductive health care. Well, we refuse to stand idly by and watch extremist Republicans interfere with women's private health care choices. That's why I introduced my Right to Contraception Act, to ensure that every American has the right to access the full FDA-approved range of birth control contraceptives. My bill will safeguard against growing threats to contraceptive rights so that every American has the power to make crucial decisions about their health, their family planning, and their lives. My bill ensures that individuals have the right to obtain the full range of FDA-approved contraceptives and that healthcare providers have the corresponding right to prescribe that medication. It also protects the full range of contraceptive methods, devices, medications, as I said, including birth control pills, IUDs, and emergency contraceptions like Plan B or the morning after pill. In June, I was proud to announce a discharge petition to bring my bill to the House floor for a vote. I invited my Republican colleagues who claim to support the right to contraception to join me in signing the discharge petition. Well, it's 3 months later. We are now out of session, and not a single House Republican has signed my discharge petition to force Congress to bring a vote on my Right to Contraception Act. So when they claim that they support the right to birth control, let's remind them of that. This comes, by the way, after 195 House Republicans voted against the right to obtain birth control in the last Congress when my bill actually passed the House floor. And of course, this bill was blocked by Republicans in the Senate. So, to quote award-winning poet, civil rights leader, and my fellow North Carolinian Maya Angelou, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Time and time again, extremist Republicans continue to show us who they are. They are waging a war on reproductive health care, attacks on birth control, and we see through Project 2025 what's going to come next, and that is criminalizing not just abortions, but the sending of birth control and mifepristone through the mail. We Democrats believe that every American should have the freedom to decide whether, when, and with whom to start a family. And on World Contraception Day, we will continue to fight to protect the access to birth control from Republican extreme attacks. Thank you so much for being here today. I will now turn it over to a great leader, a great champion for reproductive rights, my good friend, Whip Katherine Clark.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Manning, for your continued leadership in our defense of reproductive freedom, and to all my colleagues who are here and to all who stand with us. And thank you to Dana and our grassroots partners for bringing your voices to bear in this fight. As Congresswoman Manning said, today is World Contraception Day, a global call for the basic autonomy and bodily freedom that is owed to every person, no matter their gender, no matter the country they happen to be born in. This year's theme puts it plainly: a choice for all, freedom to plan, power to choose. Common sense. A cause that we should be fighting for in every corner of the world, a fight America used to lead, but not anymore. Here in our country, MAGA Republican ideology has rolled back the clock on women, on freedom, and on the fight for access to birth control. 470 days ago, Congresswoman Manning reintroduced the Right to Contraception Act. Both of MAGA Majority's two speakers in this session have refused to put it up for a vote. So this summer, 114 days ago, she filed a discharge petition, an opportunity for every House Republican to show where they stand, to match their rhetoric with an actual signature. A chance to cross the aisle and put people over politics, to choose freedom over fealty to Donald Trump. Not a single Republican has had the courage to make that choice. And unfortunately, that does not come as a surprise. They've told us their vision for women and girls in this country. It is written down in Project 2025. Tearing birth control options out of your insurance coverage, conducting what they call abortion surveillance, prosecuting pharmacists and jailing doctors, arresting women for their crime of having a miscarriage, all under the authority of a nationwide abortion ban with zero exceptions. So today is a reminder of just how profound of an injustice has been inflicted on us. We should be a model of freedom and dignity, but MAGA Republicans have made us ground zero in this struggle for basic freedom. They've rescinded human rights and they're coming for more. We will not stop fighting back. The extraordinary advocates will not stop fighting back. The American people will not stop fighting back until we restore and permanently cement reproductive freedom in our country. And now it is my pleasure to introduce a leading champion for that brighter future, our colleague from Florida, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Whip Clark, and thank you to Congresswoman Manning for your resolute championship of this really critically important issue for women. And thank you all for joining us on World Contraception Day. I am Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I'm so proud to stand with my colleagues today to show women across our country that Democrats will always stand strong in the fight to protect your birth control rights. More than 2 years ago, Trump's far-right Supreme Court stripped women of our abortion rights, endangering the lives and health of millions of women. And just as we feared, the Dobbs decision emboldened a far-right fringe to ignite an all-out assault on every form of reproductive care. We see it with IVF, and Trump's Project 2025 is a detailed roadmap to destroying access to the abortion pill. Yet Republicans can't be truly honest about their agenda because it's so incredibly unpopular outside extremist fringe circles. So they want to convince the American people that this same loss of freedom wouldn't happen to contraceptives. They say laws to protect birth control aren't needed. But just look at Trump's Project 2025 agenda. Project 2025 proposes massive cuts to Title X health clinics that provide contraceptive services. It would eliminate insurance coverage of emergency contraceptives. Trump's Project 2025 would allow employers to deny contraceptive coverage and threaten the Affordable Care Act's access to women's preventative health care. Again, we know these policies are wildly out of touch with the American people. And that's why Trump and Vance nakedly lie about their intimate ties to the ghastly anti-freedom blueprint. The CDC reports that nearly every woman will use some form of birth control during their lifetime, and recent polling shows that 9 in 10 voters believe that birth control should remain legal and safe. But because of the threats Republicans pose to this basic healthcare necessity, we need to embed the right to access to it into law. That is why Congresswoman Manning introduced the Right to Contraception Act, which would protect access to all FDA-approved birth control. This bill gives Republicans a chance to distance themselves from these draconian policies on birth control outlined in Project 2025, but they just can't bring themselves to do it. Our side of the aisle, as Congresswoman Manning said, is already on board with over 200 Democrats signing on to this legislation, yet not one Republican has expressed support for it. I'm a show me person, not a tell me person, and the way you show your support for something as a member of Congress is co-sponsoring the legislation, signing the discharge petition, publicly saying that you believe that every woman has a right to access to birth control. Instead, they just want to convince you that this legislation is pure fear-mongering and it's not really needed. On the contrary, it's very clearly necessary. Right in my own state of Florida, I see the lengths extreme Republicans will go to restrict access to birth control. Governor DeSantis repeatedly vetoed funding to help low-income women access contraceptives, including IUDs and injectable birth control. Look, we've got a real window into what Project 2025 would look like in the state of Florida. You have only to look at the extremist MAGA policies that are already being implemented. Just last week, schools across Florida reported that DeSantis' Department of Education instructed them to remove mentions of contraceptives from their curriculum and focus on abstinence only. It's no coincidence. We know education is our best tool to improve women's access to and awareness of contraception options. And this rigid abstinence-only enforcement policy shows how far DeSantis, Trump, and the MAGA extremists will go to block access to this basic information. Instead of helping teens and young women make informed, medically accurate decisions about their reproductive health, schools now must push DeSantis' radical anti-woman agenda. And it's not just happening in Florida. Across the country, young women in most red states are losing access to comprehensive education on contraceptives. Yet Republicans still want you to believe that they'll never take away your ability to access birth control. Don't believe their lies, believe their actions. They make it clear time and time again that they are a threat to women's health. Their refusal to codify contraceptive access through Representative Manning's bill is just one more example of this. But the contrast is clear for all Americans to see. President Biden, Vice President Harris, and my Democratic colleagues will always fight for a women's right to access vital reproductive health care services. That's because we truly believe that women have the right to choose if, whether, and when we become a parent. And my colleagues and I will not stop until Representative Manning's Right to Contraception Act is signed into law and your rights are protected. Women must be able to control our own bodies, and if they can't access contraception, that simply isn't possible. Contraception access is a right. Now we need to make it the law. Thank you so much. Sorry, I didn't know.
Oh, no. Aloha, everyone. And just mahalo to all of my colleagues and advocates here for being with us on World Contraception Day. And on this auspicious day, I issue a challenge to the Republicans who have yet to have the political courage to be able to sign the discharge petition to support access to contraception. I offer them a challenge to try standing in my shoes. Because I can bet you wouldn't last one day with my uterus or my ovaries. I'm a lifelong contraception user. And not for birth control, but because I have polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS. I have adenomyosis and very likely endometriosis. What that means for those who don't get it, those who have yet to sign on to this bill, is that for us, life would be unbearable without contraception. If you can imagine pain from your head to your toe, the constant bleeding, not knowing if you can actually get up and get out of bed each morning, all the while you're running businesses, you're taking care of families, you're making decisions for the rest of the country. How? How would you be able to do this? One word: contraception. Contraception makes life possible for millions of women, not just across this country, but around the world. I have been on everything from the pill, multiple IUDs. When that couldn't even work once I had children, bodies change, by the way, people. I am back on the pill, and I take it every single night so I can get up in the morning, take care of my family, my community, and make decisions that will matter in the lives of people in this country. So if you think this is just about a values proposition, or you think it's policy or just words on paper, I challenge them in this October recess, many of whom are already home. Go home. Talk to the women you love, your daughters, your wives, your neighbors, your friends, people you meet. And I guarantee you, many of them on birth control. Ask them why. Ask them how it has changed their lives. And then tell them what would happen if we took that right away. Ask them. I challenge you. Walk a day with our uteruses. And then come back and sign the discharge petition. Thank you so much for being here in solidarity with us. And let's get this done, Katherine. Mahalo, everyone.
I want to thank my brilliant and brave colleague, Representative Tokuda, for bringing to light why this issue of reproductive care is so important. And when she was speaking in such a beautiful way and trying to educate people about what birth control, why birth control is healthcare, it reminded me of a comment made by a Republican last night, who said that any woman over 50 shouldn't care about this issue because she can't have children anymore. I think Representative Tokuda has explained beautifully why that was such a boneheaded comment. Not only was it demeaning to women over a certain age, it was flat out ignorant. And I am so proud to be standing here, not just with women, but with men who understand this issue is not just for women. This issue is important to anyone who has or had a mother, who has a wife or a girlfriend, who is lucky enough to have a daughter, or who cares about women in general. This issue is critically important. It should not just be an issue for women. It should be an issue for everyone across this country. I am so delighted to be here with Dana Zingesser, co-founder of Contraception Access Initiative, and people who are working so hard with her on this issue. Thank you so much, Dana, for everything you do, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Congresswoman Manning, and thank you, Congresswoman Tokuda, for being so compelling and such great champions for contraception. My name is Dana Zingesser. I'm a co-founder of the Contraceptive Access Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to increasing access to oral contraception over the counter. In the wake of the Dobbs decision, we are in an unprecedented reproductive health crisis, and it is critical to make contraception available without unnecessary barriers. Attacks on reproductive rights have not stopped at abortion. In fact, since the Dobbs decision, we've seen an escalation of attacks on access to contraception and the right to contraception. As Congresswoman Manning said, in Justice Thomas's decision striking down protections for abortion, he voiced support for what many in the anti-contraception movement have been advocating, the possibility of overturning nearly 60 years of constitutional protection for the right to contraception. Perhaps then it shouldn't be a surprise that Republicans in Congress are just following his lead. Earlier this year, Senate Republicans blocked the Right to Contraception Act in the Senate, with only 2 Republicans joining all Democrats supporting it. And of course, here in the House, Speaker Johnson won't even allow a vote, despite polling that consistently shows that over 90% of the American people support contraception. We see this extreme ideology spreading across the country as states have begun attacking emergency contraception and IUDs as the first step towards banning many methods of contraception. There is so much we can do and so much we must do. I applaud Whip Clark and Congresswoman Manning for pushing a discharge petition to force a vote on the Right to Contraception Act. Just this week, Americans for Contraception delivered 100,000 petitions calling on Speaker Johnson and his colleagues to join the discharge petition and have a simple up or down vote on this critical legislation. We must also act with urgency to increase access to contraception. Under the Biden-Harris administration, the FDA approved the first ever oral contraception pill for over-the-counter availability. With this action, standing here on World Contraception Day, the U.S. just joined over half of the countries in the world in having a birth control pill available without a prescription. O-Pill, the mini pill, is now on store shelves, opening the door to more access. The application for a second birth control pill, the one used by over 90% of pill users, has been making its way through the FDA process for the past 3 administrations. Now is the time to complete the job and prioritize approval of over-the-counter sales for the combined hormonal birth control pill, just as they did with O-Pill. Finally, we need to make sure that everyone can afford over-the-counter contraception. Momentum is building for a new national standard that would extend the zero copay policy for prescription contraception to over-the-counter contraception. It simply makes no sense to cover contraception when you have a prescription, but not when you don't. If that were to be achieved, nearly 60 million women of reproductive age would have access to affordable over-the-counter contraception. The U.S. has historically been a leader on reproductive health, but we are at a crossroads. It is imperative that we establish the United States as a model of reproductive health and personal autonomy. We must codify the right to contraception and expand access to all. Thank you very much.
All right, that concludes our discussion today. There's certainly more to be talked about. We will continue to talk about this, push this issue, because this issue is so critically important to women, to men, to families across this country and around the world. Thank you so much.